gentlemen, we're going to move on to story circles. So if you would be so kind as to take a seat in the audience, we're going to start talking about story circles.
Here?
Well, how about right over there?
Oh, okay.
Got the Well, I hope you're getting a sense of the rich stories that we have in this valley. And if you can imagine 55 stories like this, you get a sense of the kind of rich material that we had. And story circles were something that were described to me as a way of sharing. With an oral history, it's usually one person sitting with a microphone and a tape, talking to one or two people at a time. And it is a way of catching history. It's a way of catching the history of the community. And story circles were described to me as a way of helping that community bring to life their history. And it's a group process. So instead of one person sitting with one person talking, my understanding is, and I'm still learning, you get a group of some 5 to 20 people together in a room, and they sit in a circle facing each other without any table, anything between them. And I'm sure Ron Short is going to describe this for you better than I can, but my understanding of the process is it's a way to reactivate an oral tradition. So the very first workshop, and you've come the first time in June, we were folks taking notes. He says, you stop writing and start listening, because when you're writing, you're not focused on listening. And what we're going to do here with story circles is we're going to listen to each other talk. And I'm going to let you tell more about the process, but in fact, this is a community process in which a group of people, both old residents and new timers or new residents, can get together and share stories about their lives. Now, we have run story circles in Daniels. We've run story circles. We ran a story circle in Daniels. We ran a story circle in Dorsey. And we've run a story circle on Lawyers Hill at the Elkridge Assembly Rooms. They were all very different. They were all wonderful. We had Ron and Kim did a workshop in which they taught some of us how to lead story circles, and we hope to do that then in August and include the community of Catonsville. Other communities would be welcome. And then in September, we're going to do something in this same space where we're going to tell the stories of the valley. Stories that we've gotten from listening to each other, and we're going to enact them here in September. Anybody who wants to participate in the process is welcome. I think my name and phone number is on your program. Please feel free to call me. We do have a workshop tomorrow from 1:30 to 5:30 in Catonsville. And with that much introduction, yes.
I have one more story to tell about the whiskey.
Well, you know, I'd love to have you tell that story, but if you tell that story, I won't have time for Ron and Kim.
Okay.
So what we'll do is after the event is over at 8:30, you stay. I'm sure there'll be some folks who want to hear your story about whiskey.
Okay.
Okay? I'm sorry? And after the performance, we have flyers about the workshop tomorrow. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce Ron Short and Kim Neal. They're here from southwestern Virginia or far eastern Kentucky, and nationally recognized storytellers.
I think one of the things I want to say right away is that there's nobody who is actually an authority on the stories that people tell. You heard firsthand the authorities. When people start talking about their lives, they are the authority. Well, all we have tried to do was to create an environment that allows that authority to have resonance in a larger way. And what I mean by that is I sit here and I take in this whole experience and I hear this story and this story and this story, but what I hear from out here is conversation going on. So what happens is this story is being told, it's a very particular story, it confirms other people's stories. And other people's heads start doing this. And the next thing you know, you got a whole audience going, looks like that little dog in the back of the car. And that is what community is about. Community is about the confirmation of some of my life through shared experiences that I hear from other people's stories. Tonight I learned where the chicken we had for supper came from. It's good to know those things. There was no goat, but there was chicken. I learned that you can get a doctor to tell you work outside and drink liquor. That's a good enough reason to move here, I'll tell you that right now. Work outside and drink liquor. I could live with that. Yes, I could. I learned that when you say a name around here, some people will go, and other people won't know that name. And in that moment, there's that coming together and understanding. Very simply, what happens is that we have created an environment artificially, now this is a curious thing, that allows something to happen, what used to take place naturally in people's communities. The gentleman said, they used to tell stories, and I wish I had wrote it down, and so I could remember it. But the interesting thing about it is that he still remembers the experience of people being together telling stories. Go today and try to find a place where you can find a young person who would have that same experience. It's not just a question of what we remember and write down or don't write down. It's having the opportunity to even hear the dialogue in the first place. It's having the opportunity to have the discussion in the first place. We live in a world where we live individual, dispersed lives. What used to take place naturally around the kitchen table, what used to take place naturally down at the country store, what used to take place naturally on Main Street, people would gather up and they would talk and they would share what would happen during that day. And you would know. If you wanted a fire put out, you went to the farm. You know? See, that's another thing. I can live up here. Work outside, drink liquor, and call a farm. Because some people don't know what a fire is. But anyway. You learn all of those things in a natural way, and you just take it in, and you never think anything about it because it becomes kind of common knowledge. It's only later when you try to find somebody else to tell about that experience that you realize sometimes maybe it's not common knowledge. Maybe this experience that I thought was not worth anything is at the very core and the center of my life. Maybe that what I know is who I am. And I don't know any place, anywhere, that people still don't ask that question. Who am I? Why was I put here? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? And so we began to explore stories as a way to confirm and reconfirm our own communities. We started with our own families. My father and my aunt, my father is 83, my aunt is 9. They're the only two left in that family. Between the two of them, they hold the whole history of that family. They're all that's left of that family. What we wanted to do was to find a way to give people an opportunity to tell their stories. What we realized was that it's not an easy thing to do. We created this thing called the Story Circle, and very simply, it's just that. We simply set people down in a circle so that everybody can talk, so that somebody doesn't sit up here as an authority and you sit there and go, or, So what we do is create a circle that's small enough so that everybody has an opportunity to share a story. and everybody has the same amount of time, and everybody's given the same respect, and everybody is given the same opportunity that everybody else has. And the first thing that we acknowledge is that the most precious thing that we all share, no matter where we live, is time. And nobody is worth more than anybody else when it comes to the time we spend on this earth. So you are given time to tell your story. And I mean time to tell your story. And if you don't like it, it's too bad. You don't get to say no to my story until I tell my story, because I get respect for my story. When I get respect for my story, then I am much more likely to give you respect when it comes time to hear your story. And we demand that everybody gets the same time to tell their story. And everybody gets the same respect to tell their story. And we go around, and the story flows. When I was a little boy, my daddy shaved my head. Only problem was he decided I needed a good dose to get rid of the nits, he said. So he put alcohol on my head and then lit up a cigarette. Burned every hair I had. What happens is, no matter where you live or how old you are, one person's story encourages another person's story. Doesn't matter what gender you are or what color you are. The stories have universal appeal because they encourage you not to just listen to somebody else's story. They encourage you to think about your own story. When you think about your own story, there's not one of us, no matter how young or how old, doesn't have that sense of self and that story that we need to tell about who we are. So that's what the story circle process is. There's rules and so forth, but it's not really rules. It's just a way to get people together and get them started talking. You open one door, and it's just like that dominoes when you was a kid. You used to play with them dominoes, except you line them up and make them. You tell one story, and it's like dominoes. It's just, and it's beautiful. And you hear the stories come flowing out of people. What we did then was say, we want to tell these stories in a bigger way. And so we took them from the simple, personal, to a more universal place of performance. There's no way exactly to explain that. You have to demonstrate it. What we did was take stories that may be about somebody's life, but if you look at them deeply enough, you'll find that they represent they represent the characteristics of what it means to be human. That's what these stories do. They're very particularly personal stories, but when you tell them, it's not just the events that you're listening to. This story is about something else. That something else is about being human. How does this connect with me? And so tonight, what we want to do is to demonstrate to you the next level of what happens when you have this wonderful foundation. That we take it to the next level of what we call storytelling performance. And we use all of the elements that are available to us. The stories that are there, the music that is there, and where we come from, people told stories through songs. If there was a mining disaster, they wrote a song about it, and they sang it for the next 100 years so nobody would forget how many men died down there. If there was a murder, they sang that ballad over and over again so you never forgot Little Army Wives. You never forgot that story. You sing it over and over again. 100 years later, people still sing about Jesse James. He's been dead a long time. The power of stories and songs is what we begin to understand. That may last, it'll last beyond our lives. This body is going to go. Time says it is. But these stories can live absolutely forever. Because I'll tell you right now, we're telling stories that people told 1,000 years ago. All we're doing is updating them and putting them in the present time, in the present tense. And we're telling stories that were told 1,000 years ago. We're still telling stories out of the Bible because we still don't understand. And we'll keep telling those stories because we will never understand. That's what it means to be human. And that's what theater for us is about, that exploration. So tonight what we want to do is to share some of the stories that come from the place that we call home. Now these are going to be stories that some of them will be hard. You think, nah, they don't live easy lives. No, we don't live easy lives. But it's about enduring. If you live through, like my daddy said, anything you live through is good for you. That is usually after he whooped my butt. And I would always go, okay. And then I went to college and read, and a great philosopher who said, that which does not kill you will make you stronger. And I said, my daddy told me that a long time ago. Well, am I paying good money here? So what we want to do then is to tell you some stories. We're going to do some excerpts from songs, but we want to piece it together in such a way that you'll see the possibility for your stories. Now, we're not saying to you, this is the way you should do it. This is just the way that we do it. And maybe you'll hear in these stories some of your own stories. I'm going to get some instruments. Kim,